Residents at Brightview Senior Living Communities enjoy enhanced possibilities, independence, and choice. Brightview Dulles Corner and Great Falls offer vibrant senior independent living, assisted living, and memory care services through various daily programs, chef-prepared meals, safety and security, transportation, resort-style amenities, and high-quality care. Take financial possession of your apartment by December 31st, 2025 and save. Discover more at brightviewseniorliving.com. Equal housing opportunity.
If you're a smoker or vapor ready to make a change, you really only need one good reason. But with Zyn nicotine pouches, you'll discover many good reasons. Zyn is America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Plus, Zyn offers a robust rewards program. There are lots of options when it comes to nicotine satisfaction, but there's only one Zyn. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Hello and welcome to 31 Days of Terror 2025, and we are on day number 31. Happy Halloween to everybody who is listening. Blessed Samhain. However you are celebrating Halloween today, I hope that you've had a lovely spooky season and that 31 Days of Terror has kept you company. You will have heard that I have been playing the tour promo for This Paranormal Life. So if you are around, please make sure that you book your tickets to go and see This Paranormal Life. I would highly recommend it, even if you're into the paranormal and you haven't listened to the podcast. I mean, the podcast is great. Like, it is fantastic. It's one of the first paranormal podcasts that I ever listened to. And Kit and Rory are fantastic. Even if you haven't listened to the podcast, it would be well worth going to see the live show. So, as 31 Days of Terror is coming to an end, as if it's another 31 Days of Terror over, by the way. That is wild. But as it's coming to an end, normal service will resume. So the first mini episode will be on the 5th of November and the first main episode will be on Sunday the 9th of November. So you will have a couple of days break from my dulcet tones to catch up, or to just take a break from my voice before we get back to normal service. Thank you all so much for tuning in over the last 31 days. It has been an absolute joy. And I have 2 spooky stories for you today. And story number 1 comes from Beth. I'm no stranger to visitation dreams. I've had them often from my cousin who passed away at 30, but also my grandmother and grandfather. I love these dreams. And I agree with all of your other listeners and the lovely folks on the Patreon chat. When you know, you know. There's a difference between a regular dream about a loved one and a visitation dream. I've had one particular dream that stands out and still feels as real as what I had for dinner last night or my memories of doing laundry this morning. And that's the one I will share with you now. When I was in my mid-20s, I was working for a local accounting firm on the East Coast, and Roger was a client of ours. We helped him with his business and personal accounts. He had asked my boss if he could send someone to help him with his QuickBooks and get all his personal documents in order, and as the most junior person, I was sent. I spoke to him on the phone the day before, and he spoke very seriously about the mess I was going to encounter and asked if my tetanus shots were current. I was pretty nervous and made sure to wear closed-toed shoes. When I stepped into his beautiful office full of books and curios, and he had a big pile of paper on the desk labelled The Mess, I knew I was dealing with a prankster, and we had our first big laugh together. Most of the time when I would come over, he'd be organising his books or files, but was around if I had questions. I realised quickly he was hiring me as a babysitter for himself. If he had admin chores to do, he wanted company and someone to keep him on task. He'd make me a fancy cappuccino, and we'd have a mostly productive day, although sometimes we'd just get to chatting. He had great stories about his many travels and adventures and a very dry sense of humour. He didn't smile often, but he was hilarious. Rather, he didn't smile with his mouth. His eyes were always sparkling with some kind of mischief. My friends all referred to him as Mr. Checkbook. I had 3 other jobs at the time, but that was by far the most enjoyable. You learn a lot about a person from their bank statements. He loved his wife fiercely and he was very generous with his kids and stepkids and grandkids. I knew he took good care of his employees when he sold his business. When I left that job to move into the big scary world of private equity, Roger informed my old boss that he didn't give a crap about conflict of interest and I was still going to work on Roger's finances regardless of where my day job was, and that my old boss was just going to have to like it. No one ever talked to my old boss like that, but more crucially, Roger stopped joking and told me that my world was about to change. He knew some of the people I'd be working for and what that industry was like, and warned me to make sure that I stayed true to myself and was careful about who to trust. Thank goodness he did. I was still a deer in headlights at my new job, but without Roger's advice I would have been absolutely lost. He didn't respect anyone who thought they were superior to other people, and he thought pretentiousness was gross, and suggested I make a little bubble around myself in my mind. I worked for him on weekends for as long as I could, but I had gotten so busy after a year or two that I had to give up my side gigs. On my last day, we looked through a photo album of his latest trip abroad, his last adventure before going on dialysis. We drank coffee and he wrote me a cheque even though we didn't do any work. Time passed and I was bad at keeping in touch, and I was having a lot of turmoil in my life. At my now not so new job, I worked with someone who had worked with Roger's wife. One day he pulled me aside to tell me Roger had cancer, and he didn't have a lot of time in case I wanted to reach out. I was too embarrassed to call him, so I sent a card, and I wrote down a list of all the things I learned from him and told him I was sorry. He called me as soon as he got it, and in his usual deadpan tone said, "So I guess you think I'm dying, I could hear his eyes sparkling. I got to see Roger one last time. We went to lunch and everyone working at the restaurant joked with him. He was clearly their favourite customer. He drove me around the parking lot in his cancer car, a fancy Corvette. He told me that when he passed away he was expecting to be greeted all at once by all the dogs he ever loved, and then shook his fist and said, "But not the one I hated." I told him that I was a few months away from quitting my job and moving to California to start over, get a less stressful job, and he was all about it. Happy that I was finally going to live life to the fullest and have some adventure and shake off the people dragging me down. He wanted me to tell him all about taking surfing lessons, and though I promised I wouldn't be able to. He died about a month before I moved. The funeral was a couple of weeks before I was supposed to leave. His funeral was an actual party. There must have been 300 people there, including some of my former co-workers. There was an open bar and a bluegrass band and an open mic, all of which he had requested. People started getting up and telling stories. One of his employees said Roger had bailed him out of jail and helped him straighten out. Another said, "Roger bought me the suit I'm wearing, so I had something to wear to my mother's funeral." I heard about how he put on a disguise and surprised his wife and her friends on a girls' trip, sending them drinks from behind a fake moustache. So many people had stories. I was devastated that he was gone, but amazed that one person could make each individual person in that room feel so important. I was one of many, but it didn't make me feel less than. It made me grateful that I meant something to a person like that. I want to be a person like that. But that value wasn't articulated for me until Roger's funeral. This was what life was supposed to be about. So finally, my dream. I'd been living in an apartment at the beach in California, adjusting to being far from home, but trying to make the most of it. I dreamed about the cliffs by the ocean after sunset, when it was starting to get dark, but there was still orange in the sky. I walked down a path into a cave, and as I neared the entrance, a waiter in a Hawaiian shirt held out his arm and walked me in. Inside the cave was a tiki bar, and the waiter led me to a high-top table where Roger was sitting. He had 2 ridiculous drinks in front of him. They were blue and full of fruit and umbrellas and bendy straws and looked like parade floats. I was frozen with surprise, and he and the waiter both laughed, and then Roger said, "Well, come on, sit down." He had a Hawaiian shirt and a straw hat on, and looked as healthy as a horse. I don't remember what we talked about except that we were smiling and laughing and just hanging out being buddies like we used to for what seemed like hours. I had my friend back, and it was joyous. I've tried recording the conversation, but I'm not sure there were a lot of actual words. It was more of an exchange of energy, and I felt full, like one does after a great time with friends. Suddenly I heard my alarm clock going off from a distance. Roger's face fell and he said, "Oh, darn it. I guess you have to go now, huh?" He squeezed my arm, and though I was crying, no, and was desperately trying to stay asleep, there I was, back in my room. I laid there laughing and crying for a bit, trying to process what had just happened. It was so incredibly real, and I couldn't stop laughing at the fact that Roger had somehow figured it out and hacked the whole being dead system and found a way to keep seeing his friends. I'm willing to bet that many people in his orbit have had a similar visitation experience, only curated to their relationship. I had always thought of him as the old man in Jimmy Buffett's song Last Mango in Paris, and that's exactly what my dream felt like. If I could have picked exactly how I'd see him again in a perfect world, that's what I would have wanted. He granted my wish, and I'm certain that I'm not the only one. If anyone could find a way to keep the party going and the love flowing from the afterlife, it was Roger. I'm hoping that when I get there, he'll let me in on the secret, so that I can do the same. Oh, Beth, your story made me really emotional. How beautiful. I think every so often you meet somebody like Roger and they do leave an imprint on your life and you think, oh, shit, this is the way that you're meant to live. Like, this is the type of person that I want to be for myriad reasons. And I'm really glad that you, as the junior person in the office, were sent to do his books and sort out his QuickBooks and all that jazz, because it sounds like it was perfect for both of you. And his funeral sounds like an absolute vibe. Seriously, 300 people, open bar, bluegrass band, open mic. Oh my God, that is my idea of heaven. Also, this story made me think about, the fact that you're having this dream and you end up in a cave in a tiki bar with ridiculous drinks, having a lovely time with this man. And for me, I do feel like, and maybe it's just wishful thinking, right? But I do feel like visitation dreams are a thing. And this sounds like it was Roger's way of being like, I am okay and I'm looking out for you and I'm having the best time. And I really do think, if I had my chance at a visitation dream whenever I die and I come back, I want to be also just slightly pissed, slightly drunk. That really good kind of drunk where you're a bit buzzed and a bit giddy and everything's wonderful. Slightly pissed on a dance floor, dancing to 90s pop anthems. That's what I want my visitation dreams to be when I die. So if Roger did indeed hack the system and could let everybody know how he did it, I would be very grateful for that information.
Residents at Brightview Senior Living Communities enjoy enhanced possibilities, independence, and choice. Brightview Dulles Corner and Great Falls offer vibrant senior independent living, assisted living, and memory care services through various daily programs, chef-prepared meals, safety and security, transportation, resort-style amenities, and high-quality care. Take financial possession of your apartment by December 31st, 2025 and save. Discover more at brightviewseniorliving.com. Equal housing opportunity.
If you're a smoker or vapor, ready to make a change, you really only need one good reason. But with Zyn nicotine pouches, you'll discover many good reasons. Zyn is America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Plus, Zyn offers a robust rewards program. There are lots of options when it comes to nicotine satisfaction. But there's only one Zyn. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
And story number 2 comes from Nicole. I wanted to tell you about something I experienced when I was away this summer with my daughter. I honestly have no idea what actually happened. All I know is it felt absolutely real and I was petrified. We had booked to stay at a holiday park in North Wales. It's a beautiful place in Snowdonia National Park. We had booked a lodge with a hot tub which overlooked a waterfall on the River Ogwen. We travel a lot. My daughter is 15 and is obsessed with history, photography and wildlife. We don't visit anywhere twice, so we try to do as much as we can whilst we are in the area that we are staying. We were there for a week. We never unpack and literally just chuck our suitcases on the floor in the room we're staying in and grab what we need when we need it. We were out daily from around 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. exploring. When we got back to the lodge in the evening, my daughter would get ready for bed whilst I had 30 minutes in the hot tub whilst listening to the waterfall. It was so peaceful to begin with. After a few days in the area, we decided to have a walk to the waterfall Aber Falls. I was struggling with my arthritis in my knees, so my daughter went into the woods and picked me up a huge stick that was laying on the ground, which I used as a walking stick to get back to the car. I was extra tired that night and couldn't wait to get back and have a relaxing 30 minutes in the hot tub. After the hot tub, I showered and got into bed and instantly fell to sleep. I woke up during the night to go to the toilet, but as I opened my eyes, I noticed there was a darker than dark mass at the side of my bed. I can't really describe it, but it was pitch black. It was dark anyway in the room, but this was darker than any other part of the room, and although it wasn't solid, it wasn't transparent. It was like thick black smoke, but I could see no features at all. It was just a mass, moving very slightly, like it was hovering next to my bed. My heart was pounding, and I quickly put my head down in my pillow and decided against going to the bathroom, and instead laid in my bed petrified. I realised my foot was hanging out of my bed cover, so I quickly pulled it back under and laid there for what felt like hours until I finally fell back asleep. I woke in the morning and told my daughter about it. She laughed at me and said I must have been dreaming, which I agreed I must have been, but it felt so real. I came to the conclusion that it was probably because I was so exhausted from the day before. That day we got on with our day visiting castles, looking for red squirrels, etc. I'd kept the long stick to help with my painful knees, and we again got home at around 8 p.m. Same routine, my daughter got ready for bed, whilst I got into the hot tub. Relaxed, listening to the waterfall, shower, then bed. Again, I fell asleep quite instantly. I awoke like I always do around 2 a.m. for a wee. I went to the bathroom, and when coming back, in the same place as the night before, there was this black, thick, shadowy mass again, darker than the rest of the room. I quickly switched the light on, and I could no longer see it. I switched the light back off, and there was nothing there. I ran back to the bed as quick as I could. It was a small, tight room, so this was literally about 3 steps and a jump from the light switch, but it felt like a lifetime to get to the bed. I faced the opposite way from where I'd seen the dark shadow mass and held my eyes tight shut, not daring to open them. Again, I made sure my feet were tucked in, as I was imagining that something was going to grab my feet. Nothing did, but the panic had set in. Again, in the morning, I told my daughter that I thought I'd seen the darker than dark shadow mass in my room again in the night. And again, she thought it was hilarious. I asked if she would sleep in my room with me that night, and she laughed at me and said no. She asked who the parent was, and we both laughed, and I agreed I was being ridiculous, and I agreed that it was probably because I was so tired from our busy days. However, we are used to these kinds of holidays being on the go, and I had never experienced this before. I've experienced sleep paralysis plenty of times before, and nightmares previously, but this was different, because I was awake. I went into my room to get my clothes out of my case for the day, and one of the little cupboards on the side of the bed where I saw the black mass was open. I thought this was strange, as I hadn't opened any of the cupboards while being there. I closed it, got changed, and we went out for the day, locking the door and checking it was locked like I always do before leaving. Again, we had another full-packed day, visited lots of beaches and lakes so my daughter could take photos, and again returned at around 8 p.m. This time, when we got back to the lodge, I went to open the lodge with the key, but it was already open. I thought this very strange, as I had double-checked it like I always do before we left. I checked the place over and nothing was missing. My daughter said I must have unlocked it but forgot when I got there, then thought it was already open. It did make me question again whether I was just really tired, especially because nothing was missing. Again, we did the same routine. My daughter got ready for bed whilst I had 30 minutes in the hot tub with the waterfall as my peaceful background sound. I showered and went to bed. I woke up again around 2 a.m. for my normal toilet visit, and there it was again, on the other side of my bed. But this time the dark shadow mass figure was moving up and down the side of the bed, to the top where the pillow was, then to the bottom where the foot of the bed was, and back. Although there was movement, there was no sound. There was no footsteps or creaks, just the dark figure moving back and forth almost like it was gliding. Then, almost as if it noticed I was awake and watching it, it stopped and moved over the bed towards me. I turned over as quick as I could so my back was facing it and pulled the quilt tight around me and held my eyes shut as tight as I could. I was absolutely petrified. After about an hour or so, I managed to open my eyes and turned my head around. The dark shadow figure was no longer there. I grabbed my blanket and hurried into the living area and laid on the sofa until morning with the TV on. Again, as it became morning and my daughter woke up, we spoke about what I had seen in the night. She is a total non-believer of anything paranormal and laughed at me. I was by this point adamant this wasn't from being tired and that something wasn't right. I went into the bedroom to get my clothes out of my suitcase, and again the cupboard on the side of the bed where the mass was seen was open. Again, I hadn't used any of the cupboards while we were staying there. Like I had said previously, we don't empty our suitcases. I asked my daughter if she had been in the cupboards in my room, and she said she hadn't been in my room at all since we arrived. I had the room with a double bed, and my daughter had the room with the 2 single beds. I told her that I was sleeping with her in the room that night. She told me I wasn't, as her suitcase was on the spare bed in her room, and she had everything where she wanted it in her room. We again went out for the day, and on return we did our usual routine, hot tub then bed. However, this time I decided to sleep on the sofa. This didn't last long, as it was a leather sofa and I just couldn't get comfortable. I went into my daughter's room and begged her to sleep in her spare bed in her room, and she laughed and said no and told me to stop being weird and just go to bed. I ended up back in my bed trying to reassure myself that it was all in my head with being tired. I fell asleep again quite quickly. I woke up from my sleep as usual for my 2 a.m. wee. I'm like clockwork, and although I didn't see the shadow, I hurried to the bathroom. As I came out of the bathroom, which was at the top of the long corridor, which was the length of the lodge right next to my bedroom, I looked down into the living area. It was all open planned, with kitchen and living area. I could see right at the other end what I can only describe as a stag. Apart from it had 2 kind of horn things instead of antlers. In the dark, the face was very stag-like. I stood staring at it in disbelief for a second, and it was looking straight back at me. It then started to run at me fast. I've never moved so fast in my life. Going into my room and shutting the door behind me and jumping into my bed and again pulling the bedsheet over me as tight as I could, keeping my eyes as tight shut as I could. I've never been so frightened in my life. My heart was pounding. But again, there was no sound, no clattering of hooves like you would expect from a deer. There is no way a deer or other kind of animal that size would have gotten into the lodge either. It was all locked up for the nights. It didn't reach my bedroom door as there was no clash of the horns on the door. What the hell was it? It was something, but I cannot tell you or explain to you exactly what it was, as it doesn't make sense at all, and I was 100% awake. I stayed in my room until morning and told my daughter in the morning when she woke. Obviously there was no physical evidence of this beast running through the lodge, no marks, no noise, only my witness account of what I saw. I told my daughter there was no way I was staying there for another night. She still thought it was hilarious and still thinks it's funny now and makes comments like, "Can you remember when you thought you saw a deer running through the lodge in Wales?" But I know what I saw, even though it doesn't make sense. When we returned home, I searched "Is Ogwen Bank haunted?" on Google and haven't found anything. I wrote a review on TripAdvisor of the holiday park and included a little bit of what happened. I didn't get a response from the park, but was interested to see if they would reply and mention if this had happened before. I've since Googled cryptids in North Wales, and I still can't see anything that resembles what I saw. I'm a huge believer of creatures that aren't meant to be around being around. For example, when out and about in woodland in Nottinghamshire around 10 years ago myself, my ex-partner and our children all saw a giant cat. It was around the size of a lynx and walking towards us before it ran up into the woodland. So I'm a big believer in things like that existing, even though there is a huge debate. But the difference is we know big cats do actually exist in the world. However, this beast that I saw in Wales was almost mythical in sight, and the experience felt somewhat paranormal. I'd even considered whether I'd brought something back to the lodge when I brought the huge stick back to aid my mobility. I really don't have any answers, and I probably never will. I've not experienced anything like it since returning, and we have done a huge road trip around the Scottish Highlands since, which was just as tiring as Wales, but with no scary experiences. Oh, this story went places that I did not think it was going to go, and I absolutely love it. And granted, you know, while I was listening, I was like, is this to do with the stick that you brought back from the woods? But I just don't know if even entities in the woods would be that bothered about a stick. Fairies, yeah, but this doesn't sound like fairy stuff, does it? And whatever, you know, we've heard numerous times about dark shadows that are like darker than the room, pitch black. And it sounds like you were awake every time, right? So you're up, you're going for a wee, you're getting back into bed. You know, sometimes it was there when you opened your eyes when you woke up. Other times it was there when you returned from the toilet, right? So it wasn't as if it was completely consistent where you would say, I don't know, there was something in the room casting a shadow somehow and you were mistaken it, right? And it was moving and that drawer was opening every time. So it's like something was trying to let you know that it was there for whatever reason. And I don't even know if I believe that the deer, I'm just going to call it a deer because it's easier, the deer and the shadow, like, were they even linked? Was this two separate things that were happening? I would love to know if you have previously experienced things, you know, if obviously you said you've had sleep paralysis and nightmares, but have you had other paranormal experiences? Like, are you just some sort of beacon? Because I always feel like woodlands and rural places are often quite magical. And we can't underestimate that there are probably woodland entities, like old spirits that aren't like spirits of deceased people that knock around in the woods. And maybe that's the like Irish storytelling going through my veins. I don't know. But there is a part of me that believes that in woodlands there are old things that we can't see, and every so often we get a glimpse of, and you know, it alters our perception of the world. If I sort of feel like if you believe in ghosts, it's not that much of a stretch to believe there are other entities that maybe are not what we traditionally think ghosts are, especially in those beautiful rural woodland areas. And paranormal investigators, they often do say that water is a great way for, a great conduit for the paranormal. So, you know, who knows? Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Beth and Nicole for sending in your stories. Remember, if you would like to send in your story to Real Life Ghost Stories, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/Real Life Ghost Stories, where for $5 a month or for $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
If you're a smoker or vapor, ready to make a change, you really only need one good reason. But with Zyn nicotine pouches, you'll discover many good reasons. Zyn is America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Plus, Zyn offers a robust rewards program. There are lots of options when it comes to nicotine satisfaction, but there's only one Zyn. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.